Hello, my name is Ethan Chazen. I am a New York-based business growth coach, and I consult with organizations on how do they treat their employees with ethical responsibility. I also advise organizations how to build amazing workplace cultures. And today is a little bit of a departure from what I typically do as far as doing videos on my YouTube channel that are intended to showcase organizations that are doing amazing work, amazing things. So I live here in New York City. So I wanted to do a video dedicated to the former CEO, Brian Thompson of United Healthcare, who was shot dead, shot in the back on the streets of New York City by the arrested suspect, Luigi Mangione, on December 3rd. So I want to give a little bit of context, and in the spirit of full transparency, say that I in no way condone the cowardly act of Luigi Mangione, who's in custody for the murder of Brian Thompson. But I really wanted to kind of use this as a spark conversation around the groundswell of coverage that's going on with backlash, citizenry backlash against the healthcare industry. So Brian Robert Thompson was an American businessman who was chief executive officer of United Healthcare from April 2021 until December 3rd. He started his career as a CPA. He then moved on to consulting work at PwC. So this is a gentleman who took over the reins of by far the largest insurance provider in the industry. And I want to talk a little bit about what just transpired. So just now, in New York City, the grand jury has decided to indict the United Healthcare CEO suspect of first-degree murder, Luigi Mangione. I want to read a little bit of Alvin Bragg announced on Tuesday that a grand jury has handed out an indictment against Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. So Mangione faces 11 charges, including first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. But additionally, I want to get to something else. Mangione faces 8 additional charges, 7 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in various degrees, 1 count of possession. Alvin Bragg called the 26-year-old's attack, the alleged murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, frightening, well-planned, targeted murder intended to cause shock and to gain attention and create intimidation. That's the summary of Alvin Bragg. So I want to talk a little bit about the background. As I mentioned at the onset, I'm really coming at this from the analysis of somebody who has spent my last 16 years dedicated to advising and counseling organizations how to build amazing workplace cultures that are based on probity, having a moral compass, ethical behavior, doing well, having a positive impact on society. So that's kind of where I'm going. So please understand that my focus tonight in recording this doesn't have as much to do with Luigi Mangione or, unfortunately, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, but some of the background on this. So the dark fandom behind healthcare CEO murder suspect from BBC.com. They came in hoodies, they came in masks, shuffling their feet and laughing nervously while waiting for a winner to be announced. Just a few days after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was murdered on a New York City sidewalk, these young men had lined up in Washington Square Park, which is right at ground zero of NYU on 14th Street here in downtown New York, to compete in a look-alike contest for the man wanted for his murder, who's subsequently been arrested, Luigi Mangione. It was sparsely attended, and it was seen as a joke by those who did turn up, said Talia Jane, a journalist who was there. But here's kind of where I want to go with this. It underlined an obsession with a murder suspect that has gripped social media since the killing on December 3rd, fueled by latent anger directed at America's health insurers. So what we have is historically a lot of behavior conducted against consumers, against people who are sick, against people who needed healthcare coverage by billion-dollar enterprises. So there was a lot of tinder already there, a lot of discontent, a lot of frustration already there. And this sort of threw a match on it, Ms. James said. Organizations, as I've preached for going on the last 16 years, need to take into account the result of their actions, of seeking profit before ethical behavior, of shareholder value versus stakeholder value. And in fact, the late CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was in New York City at a shareholder meeting. So this is kind of what's going on there. This is the narrative that's being displayed, is this kind of pent up anger towards insurance providers, denying claims, making it virtually impossible to gain adequate healthcare coverage, the exorbitant price of people getting ill in this country, the lack of adequate healthcare coverage. So this throwing a match on a fuse, on a tinder, already a lot of discontent. In TikTok videos, memes, group chats, a young man accused of shooting a father of two in the back in New York, on a New York City sidewalk, has fawned over and praised this suspect who's been incarcerated, Luigi Mangione, as some kind of a hero. So it's called fetishism, and it's remarkably widespread. It's not limited just to radical corners of the internet or any type of group of people with a specific agenda or political affiliation, but the incredibly broad range of positive outpouring, including fund me programs for Luigi Mangione for his defense. Let me just kind of read something from Josh Shapiro, the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, which is where this suspect, Luigi Mangione, was ultimately found, captured, arrested. "We do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint," said Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. I want to take this a little bit further. In a civil society, we are less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. Almost immediately after Mr. Thompson was shot dead, the internet began to lionize the suspected killer, Luigi Mangione. On TikTok, people posted videos of a CEO assassin, New York City walking tour. On Spotify, playlists dedicated to the suspect started to appear. Once Mr. Mangione was arrested, these fans came to his defense. So mind-boggling. I mean, we've already witnessed a recent presidential election cycle, which just reinforced and brought out all of the old underbelly, the seeded, sordid underbelly of this democracy. But there's something going on here from a company perspective, from a company culture standpoint, of organizations who pursue profit above all else, who make it so difficult for Americans to get adequate healthcare coverage, who are leveraging this tremendous technology advancement called AI to automate the rejection of hundreds of thousands of healthcare claims. This is what's going on, and it's a reckoning. It's a reckoning, and I felt compelled to record this just to get it up out there and spark some kind of conversation around this. So I want to get to somebody who people probably have a polarized viewpoint of him, but I think it's important. A gentleman by the name of Michael Moore. The name may resonate with some of the audience. Michael Moore pens a letter after Luigi Mangione arrest for CEO killing. "I condemn murder," as published in USA Today yesterday, December 16th. So I want to talk a little bit about this because Michael Moore has a unique history perspective on this specific topic. He's weighing in right now on the United Healthcare CEO shooting a former CEO, Brian Thompson, and responding to Luigi Mangione, who's been arrested. The story documentation behind this is Michael Moore. He's a documentarian behind projects like Fahrenheit 9/11 and Bowling for Columbine. He reacted to a handwritten note that police said that they recovered among suspect Luigi Mangione's possessions, where authorities say Mangione railed against healthcare insurance executives and reportedly wrote, "These parasites had it coming." So it's not often that my work, this is Michael Moore, it's not often that my work gets a killer 5-star review from an actual killer. Michael Moore wrote, whose 2007 movie, Sicko, explored the American health insurance system. He wrote in an open letter that was posted to a Substack last Friday. Moore turned the question of, do you condemn this violence, meaning Luigi Mangione shooting and killing, supposedly shooting and killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in the back. He flipped the question, do you condone this violence, on its head in the letter, accusing the healthcare system of America of its own murder instead, and its donors and political supporters as accomplices to these insurance carriers' murders. This is Michael Moore. We pay more people to deny care than to give it in this country, he wrote. We've got 1 million doctors to give care and 1.4 million brutes in cubicles doing their best to stop doctors from providing that care. I'm going to take a pause. There you go. Michael Moore, visual cue. Mangione, who's accused of assassinating, that's the word here. That's the proper term, apparently based on his motivation. Accused of assassinating United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson over a deep-seated resentment of the insurance industry. He's become a cult-like star on the internet. The really interesting question for me, as somebody who studies organizational culture, who preaches and tries to kind of shout out those organizations who are doing really, really wonderful work, the murder has served as a lightning rod for larger American population anger, hostility, frustration over what many see in America as a broken healthcare system. So on Boston University today, a CEO is murdered and consumers rage against the healthcare industry. Why? Well, we're starting to get a sense of this, just I hope, in terms of the angle that I'm taking in terms of full transparency. BU public health and public policy experts say the public's reaction may be understandable, but the United States government has to decide it needs to jumpstart fundamental change. Look, corporations left to their own devices are going to pursue a strategy of maximizing profit. That's capitalism. Now, when we talk about conscious capitalism, we talk about social corporate responsibility, organizations transforming from shareholder value to stakeholder value. You've heard me say this before. Go through my 330 videos on my playlist. It's been kind of a universal theme of mine. But corporations gonna do corporation stuff. When does the federal government step in? And I just kind of want to prime this for you. Airline industry, cable and internet providers, wireless phone services. Consumers rage against all of them. But they seem to reserve a special level of hatred for the $800 billion US healthcare industry and the shocking murder of the CEO of United Healthcare in New York City on December 3rd brought that hostility between patients, providers, between consumers, and corporate greed into a glaring spotlight. Within minutes of the shooting early on the morning of December 4th, commenters on social media did not hesitate to assume without evidence that the assassin was seeking revenge on an industry that must have unfairly rejected healthcare claim. The fact that the victim, Brian Thompson, was a successful businessman, a husband, a father of 2, garnered little sympathy online. There is a rightful rage that we live in a country where 1 in 5 Americans spends at least 1 month every year without health insurance. And even a brief coverage lapse can interrupt life-saving treatment and cause financial ruin, says Michael Stein, interim dean of Boston University School of Public Health and a professor chair of health law policy management. Add to that a system of profit maximization, prior authorization denials make us furious and feel the most personal and the pernicious, the hate-driven, ongoing discussion of privatizing Medicare and Medicaid. These are political issues that affect the public's health, but none of them will be solved by killing healthcare executives. Yet, is this what it took to spark some kind of hopeful, meaningful discussion? Probably not. In America, we're all against that. We want simple answers. We don't want to think too hard. We don't want to commit too much time. We'll move on to Beyonce or to some other celebrity or Yellowstone. We have the attention span societally of a grape nut. But right now, the cause popular is the notion of people being sick and tired of corporate greed. We've been there before. It feels like we've been there constantly for decades, right? I'm preaching that the government step in, but we don't want government to intervene. Yeah, apparently, societally speaking, Americans do want that, because Americans are sick and tired of having a system rigged against them, where getting access, meaningful access to equitable health care for themselves and the people they love, they feel it's pretty important. So I want to kind of go into an article from The Hill. No justice, no peace. Why Americans simply don't trust insurance companies. An article from Adonis Hoffman, the opinion contributor yesterday on The Hill. Following the brazen murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, many Americans have asked why there is so much hate for insurance companies. While there may be as many reasons as there are denials for millions of claims, it's clear the health insurance system is broken. It does need repair. Who's going to do it? Not the insurance companies, not an $800 billion industry. Why? Because don't mess with the money. So nothing underscores the point more than the pursuit of profits over patients by big insurance companies during the COVID crisis. Remember that little thing that people seem to want to have amnesia about? A global pandemic where over 1 million Americans lost their lives and hundreds of thousands of them unnecessarily. Remember COVID? Just want to make sure that people are still walking around with amnesia towards that. Although the pandemic exposed glaring inequities in our healthcare system, few were as egregious as the profiteering of America's largest insurance companies. At the height of the crisis, hospitals were overwhelmed. Communities struggled to access care. At the same time, major health insurance companies reaped massive profits and withheld billions in federal relief funds that were meant for frontline healthcare providers. Okay, I am at my wit's end. I'm getting a little bit upset because I have been preaching organizations to transform their cultures. I do it every day in my consulting practice. And yet, it's not enough for me to put videos up there. It's not enough for me to coach and consult small to mid-sized businesses and not-for-profits how to rethink their strategy from profit to impact on planet, from the pursuit of shareholder value to being ethical, socially conscious, to removing power from senior executives and transferring it to its employees. I mean, these are the things that need to be happening. And health insurance is just, it's in the news. In March 2020, the healthcare system buckled under the weight of unprecedented demand. Congress responded quickly by passing the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act. This sweeping legislation allocated $178 billion for healthcare providers through the Provider Relief Fund, a lifeline designed to support hospitals, clinics, and frontline workers, who are fighting the war against the deluge, the overwhelming deluge of COVID-19 patients. I live in New York City. I live across from Central Park. I saw the frozen trucks with the red crosses on them, with the bodies of the deceased in Central Park. Saw it. So in theory, the provider relief funds were to flow through the insurance companies to healthcare providers, ensuring payment of COVID-19 testing, treatment, and care. In practice, some of America's largest insurers, including United Health Group and Anthem, delayed dispersing these crucial funds, profiting off taxpayer dollars, while hospitals and clinics were left unpaid and under-resourced. You don't like what I'm saying? Put a comment. I dare you. Let's talk about it. Let's have a meaningful dialogue where oppositional viewpoints are allowed. We need meaningful discourse. It might be a first time in this country. Insurance companies play an integral role in our healthcare system. They act as intermediaries between patients and the healthcare providers, and they control these insurance providers, the flow of payments that keep the system functional. But during the pandemic, many insurers failed to fulfill their role and their obligations. Instead, they withheld funds or delayed reimbursement to the providers who needed them the most, all while posting record profits for themselves in 2020 and 2021 alone. You want to kill the messenger? Fine. I've been advocating for and will every day advocate for organizations rethinking their culture. The benefit of creating amazing workplace culture is significant in terms of potential positive financial impact. We know this. Why? Because we have decades of organizational development research that says organizations that behave more ethically have higher employee performance productivity, which drives profitability. How do I know? I spent a decade researching it. It's in my second book, The Compassionate Organization. There are organizations like Great Place to Work, Ethisphere, that have been studying this phenomenon for decades. This isn't news, folks. Not news. Meanwhile, hospitals at the same time that places like United Health Group posted a $15.4 billion profit in 2020, and Anthem boasted $4.6 billion in profit. Across the industry, health insurers collectively earned over $50 billion that year. Meanwhile, hospitals were losing an estimated $323 billion, with small community providers bearing the brunt of the financial strain. Much of this loss was compounded by delayed payments from the insurers and the misuse of federal relief funds. United Health Group, Anthem, and other major insurers reduced their medical payouts by tens of billions during the pandemic. Go ahead, defend this behavior. Defend it. I honor that conversation. So what we know about Luigi Mangione, suspected CEO shooter, Brian Thompson of United Healthcare, indicted for murder. NYPD says it spoke to his mother before the arrest. So who is he? Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old suspect in the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson earlier this month, December 4th, was indicted for first-degree murder and second-degree murder as an act of terrorism. Manhattan prosecutor Alvin Bragg said Tuesday at a press conference, where he also confirmed police spoke to Mangione's mother one day before his arrest. Police say they have evidence tying Mangione to the shooting, which his lawyer has questioned. NY Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said last week the gun found on the suspect matched the shell casings that were found at the scene of Brian Thompson's death. Okay. After arresting him December 9th in Pennsylvania, police reportedly found Mangione with both a handwritten manifesto and a notebook with plans for the shooting. It reportedly described a plan to whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention in a targeted, precise attack that doesn't risk innocence. Okay. Mangione's lawyer, Tom Dickey, told CNN December 11th that Mangione had the outburst because Maybe we'll start to get some insight on this, on motivation. Mangione had the outburst because he was irritated, agitated about what's happening to him and what he's being accused of. And he said Mangione had not had legal representation at that point, adding, now he has a spokesperson and someone that's going to fight for him. Great. So my suggestion, my strong request is to follow this to the extent that anybody can stay focused on a particular topic these days. But from a perspective of a little bit deeper insight about organizations' drive to have two conflicting or two oppositional approaches to what their legacy is ultimately going to be. One is profit maximization at all costs. We've seen this act. We've seen it in many different industries, many different permutations, but the drive to maximize profit above all else is an ultimately damning testament to the capitalist structure. We know that pursuit of shareholder value leads organizations ultimately to morally compromised behavior. Instead, in the 21st century, I've been advocating for a different perspective, stakeholder value. Don't look at companies like insurance providers, cable, don't look at banks and financial services firms. Look at organizations who have decades or their whole history of doing great work. Organizations like Patagonia and Kind and Chobani and Tom's Shoes and Honest Tea and Morningstar Tomato Company, I mean, Chewy. Look at organizations who really are advocates for treating their employees with respect, trust, civility, treating their communities in which their employees work with compassion and good deeds, and being focused on social causes, climate change, environmental concerns. These are the things that we need to focus on. So my hope is that in the coming days, in the coming weeks, people will start asking these questions. I'm not very encouraged based on our society's track record of allowing this kind of behavior to happen over and over and over again. But do me a favor, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, post some comments, look at my other playlists, organizations, doing great work, and let me know what you think, because this is a really important topic and we need to not just react off the headlines, but do a little bit of intelligent analysis on this. Thanks for coming in and taking time to watch the video. Would love to know what you think. And here's to your continued professional and business success. Thank you.